The next play has director Connell Morrison, and he's certainly doing some interesting things with the importance of being earnest. Can you tell us a little bit about the production?
I can. I've always resisted the importance of being earnest because I find it a little saccharine sweet, and I tend to like things that have a bitter sweetness. I like comedy, but I like it to have a little dark edge to it, and I find that play rarely has any in production. And
so you found a way.
Well, we found a way. Well, Connell found a way, and it's interesting because this production started at the Abbey Theater, I believe in 2005, and then they repeated it again, I think, in 2008. And Alan Stanford, who's worked with us a lot as a director, but not as an actor, starred in it. And so Alan was telling me about the show, and I said, well, I'm a big fan of Connell Morrison. I'd seen 3 or 4 productions that he's done, and his production of the Tom Murphy play, Whistle in the Dark, is one of the 5 or 6 best things I've ever seen in my life. Wow. And so I'm a huge fan of this director, but I'd never met him. And Alan said, well, you gotta meet Connell, and why don't we do the play in Pittsburgh? And so I met with Connell, and he kind of described it this way, and I can't do his Northern Irish accent, but which sometimes is really hard even for me to understand. And I'm really, he's got a thick accent. He's from Antrim up there in the north, and but Connell, like me, found the play too sweet, and he was always struck by the fact that the opening night of The Importance of Being Earnest, which took place on Valentine's Day, 1895, was Oscar's greatest triumph, clearly because the play was his masterpiece, and it was his greatest opening ever, and he was the toast of London. But it was also the beginning of his destruction, because it was the same night that the Marquis of Queensberry showed up with rotten vegetables at the stage door, which led to the writing of the infamous Somdamite note with the misspelling, and then the lawsuits, and then jail, and then it all culminated in Oscar ending up, sort of a pariah, and he died in Paris. And so Connell was really struck by that, and he thought, okay, well, let's start the play in Paris, and let's tell the story of the play through Oscar's eyes. And so the play begins with a prologue. This is very audacious to start an Oscar Wilde play with an original prologue written by the director, but this guy's very good. And so Connell's written it's almost a 10-minute prologue, okay, where Oscar, played by Alan Stanford, who looks like Oscar, he's 6'4" and 270 pounds, and he's a spitting image of what I picture Oscar Wilde being like, because he naturally has that size and grandeur. And Oscar's in this beautiful Beaux-Arts sort of, Art Nouveau cafe in Paris, and he's drinking his absinthe and his champagne, and he's flirting with the rent boys and the waiters, and a rival French writer, Jean Lorraine, comes in, and they have a bit of a tiff, and Frank Harris comes to try to convince Oscar to write something because he's out of money, and he's borrowing money left, right, and center, and nobody wants to lend him money anymore because he's not doing any work, and he's in bad health, and all this happens in 10 minutes. And then what happens is there's a bit of an incident where some of the rent boys try to rob Oscar. They're removed from the cafe, and he's left alone. And there's a moment where he's sipping his champagne, and he starts to hear the play in his head, reliving his greatest triumph. And the opening line happens, and Oscar responds, because the opening line is, "Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?" And Oscar responds as Lane, "I thought it impolite to listen, sir." And then Algernon bursts through the doors of the cafe, and the play starts to happen, and Oscar doesn't know what's going on, and why is this happening to me? I'm having an out-of-body experience. But eventually, all the people from his life become the characters in the play, and it's a straight version of the play, with the happy ending and everything, and then Connell just pulls the carpet right back out from under us at the end, and Oscar, who plays Lady Bracknell, his greatest creation, because no one else could fill the role of Lady Bracknell except Oscar himself.
That's great.
He pulls the carpet out, and at the end, he magically sort of transforms back into Oscar with his champagne, and he toasts himself at the end, and it's all very sad, and the audience starts to cry, and it's beautiful.
That's wonderful.
It's great. It's great. I really
so
like it.
So if people have seen The Importance of Being Earnest, they need to come out and check this play out also. Well, you certainly change it up after that with David Mamet's Race, and that's an interesting choice for an Irish and classical theater. What led you to select the play? Well,
I really liked the play. I liked Mamet. We had done one other David Mamet play in, I believe in 2006, we did a production of Boston Marriage, which is his all-female play. Just 3 women in the cast, no men. So I can make. So
you gave the women some, yeah.
And but it was a big success for us. You know, there's definitely a large audience for yes. David Mamet. His dialogue crackles. He always a little bit provocative, which is great. And this play, Race, is really pretty much Mamet wrote it in response to the changes going on in America in the you know after the Obama election, where you know. His idea is that maybe we're finally getting to a place where we can talk about issues of race and class and gender politics in a much more politically incorrect way. And I think that's what makes it great theater, because really what it is it's a legal case. And you have a very small law firm. You have 2 partners, one of whom is black, one of whom happens to be white. And they're deciding whether to take on a case. And the case is a very middle-aged and affluent white man has been accused of raping a black woman. And there are a lot of things going into their decision about whether to take the case. There's a lot of ideas about how they handle a case like that. And because we're seeing them talk behind closed doors, they're talking about it, no holds barred, with a lot of very scurrilous and scandalous statements coming out of their mouths that they would never say in public because they're smart guys and they're lawyers. But it becomes pretty tittillating to be a fly on the wall during the handling of this case and how they build up their defense for this man. And I don't want to spoil any any more than that. But the thing that really struck me about the play, because I saw it on Broadway, where it got a kind of a mixed critical reception, and then I saw it again in the regional premiere in Philadelphia because a friend of mine was in it, and 2 completely opposite productions. One really played the comedy, the other one really played the drama. And there's a combination of the 2, so you know, maybe mine will be somewhere in the middle. But what I loved was I looked at the audience in Philadelphia, and I looked at the audience on Broadway, and it was about 50% black and 50% white, and I thought, well, everybody in America who works in the theater is trying to find this mixed audience play.
Yes.
And this may be it, maybe not, we'll see. But what I loved the most, though, regardless, was that the black people were laughing just as much as the white people at the politically incorrect jokes.
And were they laughing at the same jokes, or did they find different things funny?
They were, because I was really watching the audience, particularly in Philadelphia, because I knew the play already at that point, so it wasn't a fresh experience for me. So I really wanted to see how people took the play, and that, you know, that to me that's exciting. And so I thought, okay, well, he's hitting something here, you know. It's not like you know, only the because you know, when you think about a white man writing a play about race, you know, a lot of my black friends,
and a white man directing it.
The first thing they say is, "Oh, come on! I'm not sure how I feel about a white guy writing a play called Race," and that's fair. I think it really is. But I think that the play overcomes that obstacle and is a pretty interesting piece of theater.
And judging from the audience reaction, it
seems to work.
Yeah.
I mean, it worked really well in both of those productions. So, you know, the Broadway production was very star-driven, and I thought when I saw it, because James Spader played the sort of, you know, the sort of manipulative white attorney, and he says a lot of really outrageous things, and he was getting laughs on nearly every line. It was like stand-up comedy, and I thought, okay, if you take James Spader out of the play, does the play work? And that's why I wanted to see it again before I programmed it. And I went to see it in Philadelphia, where they didn't have a star actor playing the part, but just a very good actor who had a very different take on the part. And I thought the play worked just as well. It wasn't quite as funny because you're not getting in-jokes off of his Boston legal experience, which, you know, clearly a lot of people watch television and were giving him credit before he even delivered a line. But the play itself worked just as well. And I think it'll work just as well here in Pittsburgh.
Great. You close the season with The Mask of Moriarty, which has 2 very recognizable characters and 2 very recognizable Pittsburgh actors. Tell us about the duo.
Well, it's again, you know, we came up with this theme this season of dynamic duos, and Antony and Cleopatra really works, and Holmes and Watson really works, and it's interesting because this particular play is a comic Holmes and Watson. And it's written by an Irish playwright, Hugh Leonard, who wrote the play Da, which is nothing at all like this play. So if I don't want people to have the expectation that's what you're going to see. It's he's now deceased, but and his real name is Jack Leonard, so he always went by Jack. So I don't know why his pen name is Hugh Leonard, But Jack Leonard was a big Holmes fan, and Michael Colgan, who runs the Gate Theatre in Dublin in the mid to late '80s, had the idea of doing an original Holmes and Watson piece, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'd love to do it." And it's full of, again, just like Importance of Being Earnest, it's full of in-jokes for anybody who's read the stories. If you know your Holmes and Watson, there's a lot of gags built off of that. But you don't need to know any, because I don't read it. I haven't read it, a lot of it. So to me, I didn't understand a lot of the reference, but the play is still hilarious.
I had the same reaction.
And it's still a thriller, and it's great fun. And one of the things that really struck me about it, because the play was done in Dublin, and Alan Stanford, who's going to direct our production, played Watson in the first production.
Oh, great.
And which is very funny to me, because Watson in this play is in drag for half the play. And the idea of a 6'4", 270-pound man in drag is pretty preposterous, but even greater, the idea of Martin Giles in drag is equally preposterous. So I thought, okay, this will really work. And the thing that struck me about Holmes in the play is it's sort of a hipper, sort of, I might say, idiot savant Holmes in this play. And no one, in my opinion, does idiot savant in Pittsburgh better than David Whalen, or anywhere for that matter. And as soon as Dave and I started talking about the play and we'd read it, he really wanted to take it on, and I think he and Marty will just have a blast with this piece. And Alan's worked with both of them before, and so it kind of came together really quickly, with the idea of doing it. And there's also the knock-on effect that the sequel to the Robert Downey Jr. Jude Law film will come out around the same time as we're doing the play.
Oh, fun.
So there'll be Holmes all over the TV screens with the advertising, and hopefully people who see the film will also want to see a play version that's equally fun and creative. And interestingly enough, the film also deals with Moriarty, his sort of nemesis and arch rival. So, I'm kind of curious to see whether the film and the play kind of have some crossover there, just in terms of plotting. But it'll be kind of exciting. And, at the holidays, we're always trying to find something that's a crowd pleaser you can bring the whole family to, because, putting on Race in December probably would not be a wise idea, although I think it would do great for us in the fall. And I think that really fits the bill. And, and I'm always looking, because we have about 30 actors that perform regularly with us that are sort of the core company. And it's a very actor-driven company. And, I'm always on the lookout for plays that have great roles for our core people, particularly our locally based people, like David and Marty and Helena. And it's terrific. And I think it's got a cast of 11. We don't do small plays usually, but
at least not this season.
But the ensemble roles are tremendously fun, sort of archetypes, and I think we have the people here in Pittsburgh to do that play well. So I'm
great.
Looking forward to
Well, best of luck. You have a wonderful season ahead of you. Pittsburgh Irish and Classical Theater opens its season with Antony and Cleopatra, running now through May 21st. For tickets, call 412-561-6000 or visit them online at PICTtheater.org. Thanks so much for joining us, Andrew, and thank you for watching.
Thanks, Kristin.